This video explores real historical events from an educational and investigative perspective. It's shared with respect for everyone affected, focusing on understanding what happened and why. True crime and historical investigations aren't just about what happened, they're about understanding why. If you value that approach, consider subscribing. A like helps this content reach others who appreciate thoughtful storytelling. Picture this, but from the outside, the mansion on Royal Street looked like a symbol of wealth and refinement. Elegant parties filled its halls, carriages lined the street outside. In a city already famous for excess and secrecy, the LaLaurie home barely stood out. But behind closed doors, rumors had already started spreading through New Orleans society. Rumors about screams, about fear, and about a locked attic nobody was supposed to see. And this is where things take a turn. In the early 1800s, New Orleans was one of the busiest and wealthiest cities in America. Merchants moved through crowded streets carrying goods from across the world. Music drifted through open windows at night. Wealth and status shaped everything, especially for families connected to the city's upper class. Among those families was Delphine LaLaurie. By all appearances, she represented refinement and prestige. She attended social gatherings, hosted formal dinners, maintained connections with powerful people throughout the city. To outsiders, she looked like someone completely in control of her world. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. Delphine was born around 1775 during a period when New Orleans was still deeply shaped by French and Spanish influence. Her family held social status for generations, and from an early age, she understood the importance of appearances. Reputation mattered in New Orleans society, sometimes more than truth itself. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is how often communities ignore warning signs when powerful people are involved. Research into social hierarchy consistently shows that wealth and status can create a kind of protective shield. People hesitate to question someone admired by society, even when troubling rumors begin to surface, and in Delphine's case, those rumors appeared early. Her first husband was a Spanish officer named Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo. The two married in the early 1800s and traveled toward Spain shortly afterward. During the journey, Delphine gave birth to a daughter named Marie. Before they ever reached Madrid, her husband died unexpectedly. After eventually returning to New Orleans, Delphine remarried. Her second husband was a wealthy banker named Jean Blanc. Together, they had several children and moved deeper into elite social circles throughout the city. For years, her public reputation remained remarkably strong. Neighbors described her as polished and intelligent. Visitors attended gatherings at her home. Businessmen respected the family's influence. On the surface, everything appeared orderly, but according to multiple historical accounts, there were moments when another side of Delphine briefly became visible. Some enslaved workers reportedly appeared fearful in her presence. Others were rarely seen outside the property at all. There were whispers among nearby residents that harsh punishments took place inside the home. Nothing fully proven, nothing openly confronted, just rumors moving quietly through the city, and nobody wanted to challenge a wealthy family without undeniable proof. To understand why, we need to look at the social structure of New Orleans at the time. Slavery in Louisiana created an environment where abuse could remain hidden behind closed doors. Enslaved people had almost no protection under the law. Wealthy households operated with enormous control over the lives of those forced to work for them. In many cases, neighbors suspected mistreatment but stayed silent out of fear, social pressure, or simple indifference. That silence would become one of the defining themes of this entire case. By 1825, Delphine married again. This time to a physician named Dr. Leonard LaLaurie. Together they moved into the mansion that would later become infamous across New Orleans history. The property stood on Royal Street. Large windows overlooked the busy roads outside. Elegant balconies faced the city. Inside, the mansion reflected extreme wealth, imported furnishings, expensive decorations, formal dining rooms designed for entertaining guests from the highest levels of society. But according to later accounts, some visitors noticed strange details almost immediately. Enslaved workers avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped abruptly when Delphine entered a room. And neighbors occasionally reported hearing unusual sounds late at night drifting from the upper levels of the house. Nobody fully understood what was happening, or maybe some people suspected more than they admitted. Now, here's the detail that changes everything. Several historical accounts mention an attic space inside the mansion that remained locked most of the time. Workers rarely entered it. Guests weren't allowed near it. Even servants within the household reportedly feared the area. That locked attic would later become one of the most discussed details in the entire story. And yet, before the fire, Almost nobody investigated further. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is how easily human beings normalize disturbing behavior when it develops gradually. Experts who study abusive systems often describe this as incremental desensitization. Small warning signs appear first, then larger ones. Over time, people stop reacting because the behavior slowly becomes part of the environment around them. In Delphine's case, the city may have witnessed warning signs for years. One story claimed that a young enslaved girl fell from the mansion roof while trying to escape punishment. Historians still debate parts of that account, and some details remain difficult to verify completely. But the rumor spread rapidly through New Orleans society, adding to growing concerns surrounding the household. Still, no major intervention followed. The mansion remained active, parties continued, guests arrived in elegant clothing beneath candlelight, while rumors drifted quietly through the streets outside. And that's what makes this case so significant. The story of Delphine LaLaurie isn't only about one individual, it's also about the environment that allowed fear and silence to exist for so long. A system where reputation protected power, a city where people looked away because confronting the truth felt dangerous, inconvenient, or socially impossible. But eventually, something happened that forced the doors open. In April of 1834, smoke began rising from the LaLaurie Mansion. And within hours, the city of New Orleans would discover a side of the house few people had ever seen. The fire would force open a part of the mansion nobody was meant to see. In April of 1834, the tension surrounding the LaLaurie Mansion finally reached a breaking point. It began with smoke. On the morning of April 10th, people moving through Royal Street noticed flames rising from the kitchen area inside the mansion. Fires were not uncommon in New Orleans during that period. Buildings stood close together. Kitchens relied heavily on open flames. Entire city blocks could disappear if a fire spread out of control. Neighbors rushed toward the house almost immediately. Servants screamed from inside. Smoke drifted through the upper windows. Crowds gathered along the street while local officials attempted to contain the fire before it spread to nearby buildings. At first, it looked like a household accident. But then, witnesses noticed something deeply disturbing. Inside the kitchen, an elderly enslaved woman had reportedly been chained near the stove. According to accounts from the time, she later told authorities she started the fire herself, not because she wanted to escape the mansion, but because she feared being taken upstairs to the attic. That detail changed everything, and suddenly, the rumors people had whispered about for years no longer sounded impossible. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is how fear can reveal hidden systems of abuse. Experts who study coercive environments often note that victims sometimes take extreme risks simply to avoid punishments they believe are worse. In this case, investigators began asking a terrifying question. What could exist inside that attic that frightened people this much? Authorities entered the mansion while smoke still moved through the hallways. Neighbors followed behind them despite attempts to keep the crowds outside. By this point, public suspicion surrounding the LaLaurie household had already spread through much of New Orleans. People wanted answers, and they were about to get them. According to multiple historical reports, officers eventually reached the upper section of the home where the locked attic door stood. The same attic neighbors had whispered about for years, the same attic servants reportedly feared, the same attic nobody was supposed to see. And this is where things take a turn. Accounts differ depending on the historical source, but nearly all agree investigators discovered enslaved individuals being held in horrifying conditions. Some were reportedly restrained, others appeared severely weakened from mistreatment and neglect. Several later accounts added graphic descriptions that historians still debate today, and many modern researchers caution against repeating unverified details as fact. What remains consistent across credible historical reporting is this: authorities found evidence of severe abuse inside the mansion, and once the public learned what had been discovered, outrage exploded across New Orleans. Crowds began gathering outside the property within hours. People who had once attended parties at the mansion now stood in the streets demanding answers. Neighbors who ignored rumors for years suddenly confronted the possibility that terrible things had been happening directly beside them all along. That reaction reveals something important about human psychology. Communities often tolerate warning signs until undeniable proof forces collective action. People may ignore rumors individually, but once evidence becomes public, the social pressure rapidly shifts in the opposite direction. Silence transforms into outrage almost overnight. That's exactly what happened here. Witnesses described growing chaos outside the mansion. Angry residents shouted through the streets. Some forced their way into the property. Furniture was dragged outside. Windows shattered. Pieces of the home were torn apart by the crowd itself. The mansion that once symbolized wealth and prestige had become a public symbol of cruelty. And Delphine LaLaurie understood immediately that her position in society had collapsed. Reports suggest she escaped the city shortly after the fire. Some accounts claim she left by carriage and traveled toward the waterfront before fleeing New Orleans entirely. Others suggest family connections helped her disappear before authorities could fully respond. What matters most is this: she vanished before facing meaningful consequences inside the city where her reputation once protected her, and that's what makes this case so significant. For years, power and status appear to have insulated the LaLaurie household from serious scrutiny, even when rumors spread, even when neighbors expressed concern, even when warning signs became increasingly difficult to ignore. But once public opinion turned, everything changed almost instantly. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is how quickly societies can shift from admiration to condemnation. Social psychologists sometimes describe this as collective reversal. A person viewed as respectable suddenly becomes untouchable once hidden behavior is exposed publicly. The same people who once accepted Delphine into elite society now wanted distance from her name entirely. Meanwhile, stories surrounding the mansion continued growing larger. Newspaper reports circulated through the region. Witness accounts spread from person to person. And over time, some versions of the story became increasingly dramatic. Certain claims were likely exaggerated through decades of retelling, especially in ghost stories and sensational publications that appeared long after the original events. But even stripped of legend, the historical reality remained deeply disturbing. People had suffered inside that house. And many warning signs appear to have been ignored until it became impossible to look away any longer. To understand why, we need to look at the broader system surrounding the case. Slavery created conditions where abuse could remain hidden behind wealth, reputation, and legal inequality. Enslaved people often had no safe way to report mistreatment. Communities built around hierarchy frequently protected powerful families rather than vulnerable individuals. Historians studying New Orleans during this period repeatedly point to that imbalance of power as a critical factor in understanding how the situation developed. In other words, this wasn't only about one person. It was also about a society willing to tolerate cruelty as long as it stayed out of sight. By the time the smoke cleared from Royal Street, the LaLaurie Mansion had become infamous across the city. Windows were broken, interiors damaged, crowds still gathered outside, trying to understand how such disturbing conditions could exist behind the elegant walls they passed every day. And yet one question remained unanswered. Where was Delphine LaLaurie? Some believe she escaped to France. Others claimed she remained hidden somewhere in America under protection from relatives. Historical records after her disappearance become increasingly uncertain, adding another layer of mystery to the story. But even as Delphine disappeared from New Orleans, the mansion itself remained behind, silent, damaged, and permanently connected to one of the darkest stories in the city's history. But even after Delphine vanished, the story was only beginning. After the fire, Delphine LaLaurie seemed to disappear almost completely from public life. For the people of New Orleans, that disappearance only deepened the mystery. Some reports claim she escaped by ship and eventually reached France. Others suggested she stayed hidden with relatives connected to powerful social circles. Historical records from the years afterward become fragmented and uncertain, which allowed speculation to grow larger with every passing decade. And when facts become unclear, legends usually take their place. The mansion on Royal Street remained standing for years after the fire, but its reputation changed permanently. What had once represented elegance and wealth became something entirely different. Residents avoided the property. Stories spread through the city about strange sounds, shadowed windows, and rooms nobody wanted to enter. Over time, the LaLaurie Mansion stopped being just a historical location. It became a symbol of hidden cruelty, of unchecked power, and of a society that ignored warning signs until the situation became impossible to deny. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is how communities process disturbing events long after they happen. Researchers who study collective memory often explain that people transform real tragedies into larger cultural myths. Certain details become exaggerated, new stories appear, rumors attach themselves to genuine events until separating truth from fiction becomes difficult. That's exactly what happened with Delphine LaLaurie. Some later retellings describe extreme acts that historians still debate today. Horror books, ghost tours, films, and television programs expanded the story further, often focusing on the most sensational versions possible. By the 20th century, the LaLaurie Mansion had become one of the most famous haunted locations in America. But behind the legends sits a much more important reality. Real people suffered there. And that's the detail that should never be forgotten. One of the biggest dangers in historical true crime storytelling is allowing spectacle to replace understanding. When stories become too sensational, audiences sometimes lose sight of the human beings involved. The case turns into entertainment instead of reflection. But the real significance of this story comes from what it reveals about power and dehumanization. To understand why, we need to look at the broader historical context surrounding slavery in Louisiana during the early 1800s. Enslaved people were treated as property under the law. Wealthy households controlled nearly every aspect of their lives. Punishments often happened behind closed doors where oversight barely existed. Even when neighbors suspected abuse, social systems frequently protected the people with money and influence instead of the people suffering underneath them. That environment made accountability extremely rare. And that's what makes this case so significant. The LaLaurie story forces us to confront a difficult question. How many warning signs do societies ignore when powerful individuals maintain the right public image? Because according to historical reports, signs existed long before the fire. Neighbors heard strange sounds at night. Rumors circulated quietly through the city. Certain enslaved workers appeared terrified. Stories spread about punishments inside the mansion. But most people looked away until undeniable evidence forced them to act. That pattern appears repeatedly throughout history. Experts studying institutional abuse often note that communities tend to rationalize troubling behavior when confronting it threatens social stability. People convince themselves the rumors are exaggerated, or they assume someone else will intervene, or they simply decide not to ask questions at all, and by the time action finally happens, significant harm may already exist. The story of Delphine LaLaurie reflects that exact pattern. Now, here's the detail that changes everything. Even after nearly 2 centuries, the mansion still attracts enormous public attention. Tourists visit the building constantly. Ghost stories continue spreading online. Television programs revisit the case repeatedly. Entire books have been written, attempting to separate documented history from exaggerated legend. Very few historical figures from early New Orleans remain this culturally recognizable today. Why? Because the story touches something deeper than curiosity. It forces people to confront the uncomfortable reality that cruelty doesn't always appear monstrous on the surface. Sometimes it hides behind wealth, behind respectability, behind carefully managed public images. What's interesting from a psychological standpoint is that abusive individuals often depend heavily on outward normalcy. Studies involving coercive personalities consistently show that maintaining social status can become part of the control itself. Respectability discourages scrutiny, charm creates doubt, power creates silence. And for years, Delphine LaLaurie's status appears to have protected her from serious consequences, until the fire changed everything. The fire became the moment private fear turned into public outrage. The locked attic opened, the rumors gained credibility, and the social shield surrounding the LaLaurie name collapsed almost overnight. But even then, full accountability never truly came. Delphine escaped. Her exact fate remains uncertain, and in many ways, that unresolved ending helped transform the story into legend. People naturally search for closure in disturbing cases. When answers remain incomplete, the imagination fills the gaps. That's one reason unsolved mysteries and unresolved disappearances continue capturing attention for generations. Human beings struggle with uncertainty. We want final explanations. The LaLaurie story never provided one. Instead, it left behind fragments, a mansion, rumors, historical reports, conflicting accounts, and a permanent question about how much truth disappeared alongside Delphine herself. Today, historians continue debating aspects of the case. Some descriptions were almost certainly exaggerated over time. Others appear supported by early newspaper reporting and witness testimony. Separating fact from folklore remains difficult even now. But regardless of which details grew larger through retelling, the central reality remains deeply important. The abuse itself was real, the suffering was real, and the societal silence surrounding it was real too. That's the lesson this story leaves behind. Not simply fear, not ghost stories, not mystery for the sake of entertainment, but a warning about what can happen when systems protect power more aggressively than human dignity. And that's why the story of Delphine LaLaurie continues surviving generation after generation, because beneath the legends and rumors lies something much more unsettling. The possibility that entire communities can recognize warning signs and still choose not to act until it's far too late. If this investigation resonated with you, I recently covered another historical case involving hidden warning signs and psychological manipulation that I think you'll find equally compelling. That video is on screen now, and if you haven't subscribed yet, there's a button right here. I'll see you in the next one.